here. So we're glad you're here. Get a chance to look around the school and get to know us and come back. More importantly, send your sons and daughters.
Please, I'd like to call on Hall County Chairman Chris Yardley for our pledge.
Please join me in saying pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our moderator tonight, Tim Bryant. Bryant is our Georgia Morning News. We're on the radio starting about 6 o'clock in the morning, I think, in 10 stations around the state. He's also the host of the Tim Bryant Show on WGAU in Athens. I've said in other debates that Martha is the lady that I wake up with every morning on the radio. Just kidding, Mary. I won't say that about Tim. Without further ado, let me introduce our moderator for this evening, Mr. Tim Bryant. Thank you.
My first trip to Brunel. This is a beautiful, beautiful facility. Let us begin, or let me begin this portion of the program by having you folks thank our host this evening, President Schrader and the folks here at Brunel. Thank you very much. I was excited to hear, and I did not know, well, where is he? Where's Alec Pointer? Alec Pointer, the former chair of the Georgia Republican Party. My radio career began in 1988 in Bainbridge, Georgia. And the very first story I ever reported was that a fellow from Bainbridge by the name of Alec Pointer was going to be the chair of the Georgia Republican Party. So here we are reunited all these years later. This is exciting stuff. Also exciting, of course, is what we're doing here this evening. This is, as John might have mentioned, the third debate in a series of 7. The Georgia GOP is sponsoring these. I understand the local party, the Hall County Republican Party, has been instrumental in organizing this, and our thanks to them as well. Let me now introduce our 2 questioners. These are the folks who will pose the questions to the candidates who will be out here momentarily. More about Todd Ream and Kyle Wingfield momentarily, but Todd, say hello to the folks. Hello. And Kyle Wingfield, also here this evening. We'll have more to say about those questions in introduction. But let me now bring out our 7 candidates. The 7 candidates for the United States Senate coming out now. Could you please join me in welcoming them to the stage? Now, I've said this before in other debates that I've had the pleasure to moderate over the years, by way of explaining the rules that we'll operate under this evening. One of my favorite movies, perhaps yours, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. There's a scene in that movie, you remember this? A scene early in the movie in which it's Butch. He's going to fight the big guy, right? Remember this? And they determine how they're going to fight. They're going to fight with knives. And at some point someone says, let's go over the rules. At which point someone else says, there are no rules in a knife fight. My favorite line regarding debates. We do have a very few rules here this evening. We'll try to keep the knives at bay. Each of these candidates will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds to respond to each question. Every candidate will be asked every question. In other words, every candidate gets a shot at each of the questions that are posed by our 2 journalists here. Should I, as the moderator, determine the need for a rebuttal, that rebuttal will be extended to an individual candidate, and that candidate will have roughly 30 seconds to make the rebuttal. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for a closing statement, and there are the extent of the rules. We remind the candidates that down front is, I believe his name is Rick, right? Rick is holding up not 1 but 2 cards at various points around the evening. The first is the yellow card, as you see. That will indicate that you have 30 seconds in which to summarize your remarks and to begin wrapping up your statement. The red sign is a stop sign. That is the time for you to stop talking, or else they tell me to jump in and stop you from talking. And there it is. That's the extent of the rules here. Again, I mentioned our two journalists here. Let me say a word about them, and then we'll let those folks toss out the questions. Todd Green, to my immediate right, is a pollster and a political consultant, began his career in Georgia politics with internships at the Georgia Republican Party, working with the director at that time, David Schaefer, worked on the 1992 successful Paul Coverdell Senate campaign. Has started a website devoted to Georgia politics from what he says is a conservative Republican perspective, and a very fine website it is. If you're not familiar with it, familiarize yourself with it, georgiapundit.com. Publishes, he says, the most widely read daily email newsletter about Georgia politics. Also, and I don't know that I knew this, is the editor at InsiderAdvantage.com, another fine and long-running, in fact, the longest-running website about Georgia politics, and an associate publisher of James Magazine. Todd grew up in Gwinnett County, got out as fast as he could, and graduated from Emory University, where he studied under the renowned professor of political science, Dr. Merle Black, lives in Brookhaven with his wife, Stephanie, and it says here only 2 dogs. Kyle Wingfield, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the HAC's conservative columnist. After much deliberation, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution decided they needed a conservative columnist. He came with credentials that include a stint at the Wall Street Journal, based in Brussels, worked for the Associated Press in Atlanta and in Montgomery, Alabama, is a native of Dalton, a graduate of the University of Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, the questioners, the journalists who will pose the questions. Now, by way of introducing our candidates, and I will start from my left. I see Art Gardner. I see Congressman Phil Gingrich. I see former Secretary of State Karen Handel. David Perdue, Derek Grayson, Congressman Jack Kingston, and down there to the far right, or the far left, I should say, probably the only time I'll use that phrase is Congressman Paul Brown. Opening statements, and again, keep in mind 2 minutes for the opening statements, and keep your eye on Rick, our timekeeper. I'm going to give you guys a twist. I don't think you've been asked to do this by way of making your opening statements. We're going to do it tonight. See how it works. I want all of you to note the person to your immediate left. In the case of Congressman Brown, I want you to think about Art Gardner down here to my immediate left. All right? As you make your opening statements, incorporate in that opening statement something nice, something positive about the person to your left. Art Gardner, to you first.
Thank you. My name is Art Gardner, or as it says in your straw poll, Mr. Other. I'm 55 years old. I've been married for 32 years, and we have 3 adult children. I've worked in small businesses for 36 of the last 41 years. I worked for 10 years as a car mechanic, worked my way through Georgia Tech doing that. And to my left is another Georgia Tech man. I worked for 5 years as a manufacturer. I worked for 5 years as a manufacturing engineer for Lockheed, and I've been a patent attorney for the last 26 years. I started my own firm in 1995, and we employ 18 people. I've been a problem solver for the last 40 years. I sometimes joke that if I can't fix it, it ain't broke. Now, I'm not a Me Too candidate. I'm going to tell you things that the other candidates are not going to say. In fact, I'm saying that I'm the only candidate on this stage that has the courage to say that our party needs to go in a new direction. We need to build a coalition that includes conservatives of all stripes, not just conservatives that fit a narrow definition. Now, I'm going to take some heat for that, but that's okay by me. Because when we get back to the core of true conservatism, which is focusing on limited government, personal responsibility, and personal liberty, we win. That's the winning formula for our party. We can't allow a vocal minority to push people away from our party. And I'm talking about young people, women, and minorities. Now, I'm out to fix the budget. That's why I got in this race. And I want to restore normal bipartisanship. But I want to leave people alone. As I said, that's the recipe for success. I have different ideas than the other candidates in this race.
And you have 30 seconds to say something nice about Phil Gingrich.
I thought I said he was a Georgia Tech man. Look, my ideas are not poll-driven. To quote a famous conservative trailblazer, I offer you a choice, not an echo.
Congressman Phil Gingrich, your opening statement.
Well, the candidate to my immediate left, Karen Handel, is without a doubt the prettiest candidate on this stage. I want to thank, of course, Brunel University and President Schrader for giving us this opportunity to have this forum tonight. I spent 1 year at Grady Memorial Hospital as an intern. I spent 2 years in a family practice in the Augusta, Georgia area. I spent 3 years training to be an obstetrician gynecologist. And during a lot of that time, I was actually practicing on the weekends. And then my wife and I, Billy, my wife of 43 years, settled in Marietta, Georgia, in Cobb County, where I practiced medicine for 26 years and delivered 5,200 babies. Now, you don't have to be a Georgia Tech graduate and take calculus to add that up. 32 years. I am a career physician. I am not a career politician. But I did have the opportunity, I was really blessed to get involved in public service while I was practicing medicine, mostly on a part-time basis. I was in the Marietta City School Board for 4 years. My kids all went to school there. And then I was in the State Senate for 4 years where I met our Lieutenant Governor, Casey Cagle. Then I was in the United States House of Representatives, now my 12th year, where I met our Governor, Nathan Deal. What a great opportunity. The most important thing in this election, of course, is to repeal, get rid of Obamacare, and save this country. And that's what I'll be about. I promise you that we will repeal and replace, or this candidate will come home. I'm making an accountability pledge to you, not just a lame duck pledge to have term limits, but to really put the skin in the game. And by the way, as I conclude, well, the last thing we need is another omnibus bill on immigration. Amnesty, never.
Thank you very much. And to the gentleman to my left, David Perdue is an individual that, in all sincerity, is a genuinely nice individual, and I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know him over the course of this campaign. I think that he's a ladies and gentlemen, results matter and records count. In the business world, where I spent the bulk of my career, but also in elected office. As Fulton County Commission Chairman, when I came in, I faced a $100 million budget deficit, and I faced it head-on by cutting spending and prioritizing the departments in our county. And we did that, balanced that budget without a tax increase every single year that I was chairman of the Fulton County Commission. When I came in as your first elected Republican Secretary of State, an extraordinary privilege that I thank you for. I had faced a budget cut again, 20%. I had to cut the agency's budget by that 20%. I still had to deliver vital services. At the same time, I implemented photo ID, and I also took on the Obama administration to make sure that only U.S. citizens were going to vote in our elections here in the state of Georgia. Results matter and records count. So let's take a look at the results that we've seen from Washington lately. They are beyond poor, beyond terrible. Reckless spending has taken us from a $4 trillion debt to $17 trillion. We're overtaxed, we're overregulated. Now tonight you'll hear a lot about, we've cut this, we introduced this, we sponsored that. My opponents are nice folks, but they spent together a combined 42 years in Washington. That is a lot of Washington. Folks, we need new leadership in Washington, individuals who will stand up with the guts and the resolve to make the hard decisions to solve the real problems that we're facing today, because frankly, we can't afford more of the same. We can't afford more of the same. There's one individual on this stage who has shown time and time again that she has the guts and the resolve to get the job done and to actually deliver results. That's me, and I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. My message in this race is very simple. We have a full-blown financial crisis on our hands. It's real, it's serious, and it threatens our very way of life. The candidate on my left, Mr. Grayson, is a great Christian man. I put my family under his leadership any day. He's probably the best public speaker up here, too. I'm a political outsider. I've spent the last 41 years of my life running around the world competing in the global economy in our free enterprise system. I worked my way up to become president and CEO of the Reebok brand and chairman and CEO of Dollar General. I had a chance last year to sit in a very small meeting with 4 past secretaries of defense who said that the greatest threat to our national security is our own federal debt. $17 trillion we all know about. But what we're really not talking about in Washington is $86 trillion of future unfunded liabilities that we've already committed for in pension and benefits for federal employees, Social Security, and Medicare. That's $1 million a household. So everybody here as a kid, you've just given your children a $1 million credit card bill. And oh, by the way, you've got one too. And what are we getting for all this spending right now? 1 out of 5 Americans are out of work or unemployed or underemployed in America today. We have the smallest workforce since the Carter years. And 80% of the jobs this president is bragging about that were created last year are part-time jobs. He calls that the new norm. Well, who's to blame? Well, honestly, I think I am. But I think you are too. The problem is we keep sending the same type of people to Washington expecting different results. The good news is we've got a way out of here. There's hope. We did it in the 80s. We have a $16 trillion economy. The rest of the world would kill for that. And we're not using it to enter the debate between tax increase and spending cuts, and therefore we have gridlock in Washington. We can absolutely grow our way out of this crisis. My business background, my leadership track record, my willingness to make the tough decisions makes me a good alternative in this race. The next senator from Georgia had better be more interested in the next generation than the next election. Remember, if we want different results in Washington, we need to send a different kind of person to Washington. Thank you.
But he did something nice about Jack Kingston. Yes, Derek Grayson.
At first, I thought it was light, but then I realized it's the warmth in here that I'm feeling from all of you. Your being here is a big deal, and I thank you for that. My father always told me, a man that comes to you with his hand open, always give him yours. Mr. Kingston has always greeted me pleasantly and thankfully and made me feel welcome in this debate, and I appreciate it. In case any of you didn't hear it, my name is Derek Grayson. I'm not going to talk about me because I'm really not that important. What is important is our Constitution, our liberties, and our freedoms. If my words compel you, go to my website, grayson2014.com, and you can read about me, and you'll read about amnesty and repealing Obamacare. See, we all on the same page when it comes to conservative and hopefully constitutional principles. So let me just get right to it. In the first debate, I talked about the state of things. They aren't getting better. That is an undeniable truth. Things are terrible. And I know many of you might be sad by that, but we need to wake up and smell the coffee. In the second debate, I talked about the complicity of those in both the Republican and the Democratic Party. I call them the royals, political royals who think that they know better than we and they endeavor to lead us rather than represent us. I also gave them a homework assignment at the end of the second debate. I say, now, you have heard some truths in here tonight. When you leave, watch the presses and see if you hear from them what you heard here that night. Only one person immediately reported accurately what each candidate said verbatim, and that was John Gillooly of the Marietta Daily Journal. The rest, one paper went as far as to say Derek Grayson was present. That's not reporting. That is not being accurate. That is not giving the American people a choice. Why is that? Because they don't want you to have a choice. This is how the royals dictate. This is how they control, and this is how they keep you locked into this gridlock of constantly sending recycled politicians back to D.C. and us constantly getting the short end of the stick. Bottom line, I don't want 536 people doing what they want to do. I want 536 people that are going to support 100% of the Constitution, 100% of the time. And if you send me, you can knock it down to 535.
Thank you, President. Congressman Jack Kingston, a 2-minute opening statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. I'm glad to be back on the Grinnell campus. I'm here because the American dream is in peril. A large, intrusive government with runaway spending is sapping away our liberty. And I worry that my children and your children won't know the America that you and I know and love. I worry that they won't have the same opportunities that we have had. I am convinced that the battleground to turn America around is in the United States Senate, and that's why I'm running. I'm an Athens, Georgia boy, right down the road. And my friend Paul Brown is also an Athens, Georgia boy. And he and I fought on the same side of many battles together. I've enjoyed serving with Paul in the United States Congress. Our parents knew each other. We went to the same church and the same high school. That's it, Paul. I was going to add, and he hadn't said anything bad about me all day long. My dad was a World War II veteran. He was raised in the Depression. He taught us the value of the dollar and the rewards of hard work. We all had chores. My mom, who's here tonight, was very idealistic. She made sure we got to church, made sure we knew right from wrong. And Libby, my wife of 34 years, who's also here tonight, have tried to instill these same values to our children. Frugality, hard work, idealism. As a businessman, I applied these to my occupation of selling property and casualty insurance. I became the vice president of the company. I served on the board of directors. I know what it's like to run a business, and I know how government can interfere with the decisions that business people make. As a member of Congress, I haven't forgotten the lesson of frugality. I've returned over $1.3 million in unused office expenses, in rent, and salaries, just keeping the budget low. As a committee chairman, I cut spending by $3.6 billion and negotiated with the Harry Reid Senate to get it accomplished. I worked hard to fight bureaucratic overreach. I have fought hard for ways to create jobs in the private sector. And I've introduced a 6-point plan to turn America around.
Congressman, I'm sorry, we don't have time for all 6 points right now, so we can bring this in for a landing. Is that it?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Privilege, sir.
Yes, sir.
If it would be possible, could we get our friend here to move towards the center? Because it'd just be a little bit easier for
You
us.
slide, there's a couple empty seats down there. Sorry about that. Congressman Paul Brown, remember your date for this round is Art Gardner. Tell us something nice about him. 2-minute opening statement.
Tim, I thought I was going to be able to talk about you. In fact, I worked up a good little speech, Tim, about you. I'm often asked, Dr. Brown, what most separates you from the other candidates? It's definitely my strict constitutionalist view about the proper role of the federal government. Today's federal government is largely unconstitutional in its scope and behavior. As such, it poses a clear and present danger, an ever-increasing present danger, to your individual liberty and your future prosperity. To remain a free people, enjoying life in a free republic, we absolutely cannot allow the federal government to continue on its out-of-control rampage. I have a great sense of urgency to solve this problem. Big government is crushing the economy. It's killing jobs. It's taking our liberty and freedom away, and that must stop. The other candidates, however, appear to not understand the profound nature of this threat. They meekly accept government as it is. None of them has offered even one specific idea as to how they would limit government. At best, they seem to propose a less expensive, more efficient version of the status quo. But I directly challenge the constitutional legitimacy of today's federal government. I challenge its right to behave as it does toward individual citizens. And I challenge its right to reduce the states to mere administrative units of the federal government. We must fundamentally transform the federal government, forcing it back into its constitutional role. We must begin now to peacefully dismantle the welfare state, the regulatory state, and the surveillance state. We must restore the supremacy of the Constitution. We must limit the scope of the federal government. Defund its unconstitutional programs and begin now to return power to the states and to the people.
And Congressman, I must jump in and tell you that your time is up. Sorry, we got to get to the questions now.
Okay.
Before we do, a couple of things really quickly. We have another audience that's not in the room here, and I should have mentioned this at the outset. Our host, Grinnell University with a campus radio station, WBCX. They have an audience on the air and streaming live at their website. Let's all say hello to the radio audience. And you may have noticed that we only have 7 candidates up here this evening. There was an 8th announced candidate who appeared in the first 2 debates. You've possibly heard this by now, but by way of news, we will let you know that Mr. Eugene Yu has opted and has let us all know this evening that he is exiting the Senate race and is entering, as a Republican, of course, the race for the 12th Congressional District over in the Augusta area. He will look to challenge, should he be successful in the primary, the Democrat John Barrow in November. With that, we turn now to our 2 distinguished journalists, Todd Green, Kyle Wingfield. Todd Green, the first question to you, and again, 90 seconds to respond, and let's all keep an eye on the record. I'm going to be a little more stringent on the time here with these questions because we want to get as many as we possibly can. We want to get to as many as we can this evening. So the briefer the answer, the more we get to. And back to Art Gardner for our first question. Todd.
Good evening, everyone. 2 weeks ago, Congress passed a $956 million park bill. For the members of Congress, please tell us whether you voted for it or not and why. For those who are not in Congress, please tell us whether you would have voted for it or not and why.
Todd, I voted against that bill. That bill was a bloated bill that included, as you know, not just the farm issues, not just conservation, not just crop insurance, not just commodities, but also something called the SNAP program, better known probably by most of you as the food stamp program. And it included about 79% of the farm bill. It absolutely should not be a part of the farm bill, but it is in there to try to get votes from folks that normally would not vote for something that is bloated. And we cut originally in the farm bill that I did vote for in the House of Representatives several months ago when we divided the 2 bills. There was a $40 billion cut in the SNAP program. I voted for that. But in the final analysis, this bill that came to us, the conference report under regular order, there was an $8 billion cut in the SNAP program. We can't afford that. I love the farmers of this state. It's the #1 industry in this state, and it is very important that I stand strong for the farmers, and I will. But we have to cut spending, and I think they know it. We don't want to give all these subsidies to these big mega farmers who are not row croppers. They're big conglomerates, and that's why I voted no on that bill.
Congressman Gingrich, Karen Handel, the Farm Bill, yea or nay?
I would have been a nay, given that it was a combined bill between the food stamps with the farms. Now, let me be abundantly clear. I believe that our agribusiness community, we all know how important it is to our state, but they have a right and deserve to have their issues stand on their own and not be traded off. There were some real missed opportunities within the Farm Bill to do some reforms that many in the agribusiness community wanted to have. This bill, it's interesting to me that individuals talk about how much we have a spending problem in Washington, and yet this is a bill that went from a $640 billion farm bill, the first one, to a nearly $1 trillion. It seems like only in Washington do they not understand that we have a real spending crisis in this country, and we need to get serious about cutting the spending. Again, it was a missed opportunity to do some good things for our agribusiness community, but when all was said and done, a $1 trillion bill was unsustainable and not in the best interest of the overall country.
Well, I hate to be boring, but what she said, I would have voted against it for different reasons, though. This is another example of where distractions in Washington have got us in this mess. Certainly, half of our budget in Georgia, half of our economy in Georgia is our ag business. I grew up on a farm. I know what it's like down there. And I understand the bureaucracy that comes from Washington that's killing it. Has anybody bought propane in the last week or two? I mean, propane is just out of control right now. Why is that? Well, I'm telling you right now, one of the things that we're facing is that 1/3 of the money that these guys in Washington are spending right now is borrowed. In October last year, the Congress gave themselves 60 days to get a reconciled budget. 60 days, something they hadn't done in 5 years. And oh, by the way, the president said, well, that's be very nice, but at the same time, I want a farm bill and I want an immigration bill. Now, how is that distracting away from the 800-pound gorilla problem that we haven't had a budget in 5 years? We're going to spend over $1 trillion more than we're bringing in, and this thing at $17 trillion will be over $18 trillion before you know it. And the problem is, I just can't stand by and watch that happen. Our farmers are very important. The purpose of these bills to start with was to maintain our food supply. We have a huge export opportunity that can get this economy going again. I'm in a small business right now that's exporting ultra-high temperature milk to China. I'm living the dream because I know it can work. Thank you.
Would you have voted for or against the Farm Bill?
Thank God I record all of the debates. In the first debate, they asked us about the Farm Bill. I was the only one that said what they are saying now, and that is the issue with the food stamp program. 2 problems wrong with the Farm Bill, and answer to your question, it would have been no. That is, they tied the food stamp program to the Farm Bill so that they could hamstring each other in getting the things that they won't pass and going through all of those motions to keep us in the dark. Bottom line, they should have fought the Republicans to separate the food stamp program from the Farm Bill. And the second thing they should have demanded is that the government get out of the farming business. They actually tell farmers, well, this year you produce this amount of milk. Next quarter, only produce this much sugar. I thought the government was in the business of representing the people, not doing business for us. That's why I don't care nothing about people that claim, well, I'm a businessman. I don't want you to go to Washington to do business. I want you to go to Washington to represent.
What was your vote on the Farm Bill?
I voted for it, and let me make sure you understand. First of all, we did vote to split the nutrition section off from production agriculture. It was the Senate that put it back together again, which is why I'm running for the Senate. It's one example of how it works. 3 points on the Farm Bill. Number one, it saves $23 billion from where we were by moving agriculture from a direct payment basis to an insurance policy. Major reforms for production agriculture. Number two, it has a workfare over welfare component for food stamps. Now, it wasn't the one that I co-authored with Steve Sutherland in the House that said if you're able-bodied and on food stamps, you ought to be required to work. But what did get passed was that 10 states would have this program. And I am hoping that Georgia will be one of them. But that is a step in the right direction on reforming food stamps. And number 3, for those who don't like the EPA, there were all kinds of things in this farm bill that pushed back on EPA so that private landowners could build roads and move dirt and do things without having some government bureaucrat give them permission. Agriculture in the state of Georgia is $76 billion, 1 out of every 7 jobs, 680,000 jobs. It is a strong force for our economy. It's poultry here, it's bread in Thomasville, it's onions in Vidalia, and it's groceries for your family.
Congressman Paul Brown, your vote on the farm bill.
I voted no on the Farm Bill because I thought it was very economically irresponsible. And I'll continue to vote against economically irresponsible bills. In fact, I led the charge with a couple of other members of the House to separate the food stamps from the farm part of the Farm Bill. But unfortunately, as my friend Jack Easton said, the Senate put them back together. I used to farm. I've had dairy cattle. I had Holstein cows that I milk. I was in the beef cattle business. I had white-faced Hereford cattle. I've hay farmed. I've trunk farmed. And I've row cropped. The biggest problem with farming today is the federal government. And the biggest part of the federal government that's bothering agriculture today is the EPA. And I say, let's close down the EPA completely.
And
the high cost of agriculture, I'm not through yet.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The high cost of agriculture to produce crops is because of the federal government. It's just got to stop. We have the best farmers in the world here in Georgia. I know, I used to be a farmer and I know how they can outproduce producers all over the world. But the federal government's the problem. We have to get the federal government off the farm. And I'll continue to work to do so.
And now, your stance on the farm bill.
Thanks. First, I want to compliment Congressman Brown for his incredibly brief complimentary words of me.
If you like, you can say something bad about him later.
I think I just did.
I don't claim a rebuttal.
I would vote against the farm bill as it passed. First of all, we obviously need to cut spending, and this is an example of more spending, not less spending. We have a spending problem, not a taxing problem. And this shows how politically difficult it is to really cut spending, which is why most politicians do not tell you what they're going to do to actually cut spending. They'll say they're going to cut spending, they promise to cut spending, but they don't tell you how because how is hard. So if you go to my website, you'll see that on my website, GardnerSenate.com, I've got a very detailed plan for how to actually cut spending. It won't be popular with everybody. It'll be hard to do, but it needs to be done. And I disagree with the notion that we should shut down the EPA. It's fine to scale back the EPA or to rein it in so that it's more reasonable, and so that it's business-centric, and it doesn't try to put people out of business, including farmers. But we need the EPA. We can't go back to polluting the earth, polluting the water, and polluting the air.
Now, Winfield, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, your question, and it will go to Darren Hammond.
Thanks, Tim, and hello, everyone, tonight. We've just been talking about agriculture and food supply. We've already heard a few references tonight to amnesty, so I want to ask a question about immigration. Pretty much everyone agrees that our guest worker program is broken. What I'd like to know from each of you tonight is, what do you think we need to do to go about fixing it?
Thank you. Well, I think first and foremost, no more amnesties, regardless of what we call them by. Number two, Number two, we have to get serious about securing our borders, and that means border patrol, infrastructure, and technology to actually reduce the flow of illegals in. Number three, fix the visa system, which is broken. Nearly 45% of illegals in our country came here legally and skipped out on their visa. Number four, enforce our immigration laws uniformly and robustly. Number five, stop the hiring of illegal workers, require E-Verify and more rigorous workplace enforcement that holds employers and the illegals accountable. Lastly, we need to support the American workers, and this gets to the guest worker program. We need to have a stronger emphasis on the STEM technology, math, engineering, science initiatives so that we are building here at home the kinds of technology and the kind of education and the kind of qualified workforce that we need so that we're not looking overseas to bring individuals in.
Immigration.
In 1986, the Republicans were in charge, and we tried amnesty. How'd that work out for us? No amnesty, secure the borders, and enforce the laws. This administration is getting a pass by our Congress. They have absconded on their responsibility to hold the executive branch responsible. There have been articles after articles talking about how weak this Congress is, and it didn't just start in the last year or two. This president couldn't get cap and trade passed. He bypassed Congress and told the EPA to kill coal, and they did within a year. Farmers in this country have to have the bureaucracy off their backs in terms of getting guest workers, but I agree with one thing that's been said. Our education process is doing our kids a disservice, and one of the manifestations of that is we don't have enough workers in the right places to match the jobs that are out there. 1 out of 3 kids in America will not get out of high school today, the richest country in the history of the world. 1 out of 3 does not get out of high school. Our 14-year-olds are 25th and 26th. Our 2-year colleges are underutilized. If the technical college, you put these people out and get them trained, and it will diminish the demand for illegal workers and also for the bureaucracy that's necessary to handle the guest worker program.
Derek Grayson, the question on immigration.
For the record, I am not anti-immigration. I am anti-amnesty. But I am pro-rule of law. I would like to see a streamlining of the process to make it more affordable, make it more efficient, and equitable across both economic and racial lines. Now, there are other issues that we have. Mr. Perdue just talked about not enough workers. Well, you want to know why we don't have enough workers? That's because of government interference. See, when government gets involved in business, government tends to break things. Look at the post office, look at Amtrak. What do we have taking place? Jobs flying overseas. You call Cisco's technical support, you get somebody in India. Call Priceline's customer service, you get somebody down in Mexico. Those used to be American jobs. That's where all of our jobs have gone. And if you want those jobs to come back, we also got to get government out of education. When I was in high school, we had alternative paths for education. Wood shop, metal shop, the whole 9 yards. Everybody was not going to college.
Congressman Jack Kingston, I've been asked to ask you if you could step just a tad bit closer to the microphone, Congressman Kingston.
How's this? On immigration, no amnesty, secure the border. Keep in mind, though, that 40% of the illegals actually come in legally, and then we're not tracking them, we're not monitoring it so much. So securing the borders isn't just building a bigger or taller fence, it's all kinds of ways that you need to control the border because it is porous. Number 3, you need to crack down on anyone who knowingly hires illegals. And then number 4, no welfare for illegal workers. I'll give you one example. Right now, you do not have to have a Social Security number to claim a child tax credit. In one household of illegal workers claimed 28 children, and they were all living in Mexico. That cost American taxpayers $4.6 billion a year. I've got a bill that changes that, but you got to be You've got to have common sense. You've got to crack down on that kind of abuse. And finally, something this administration has great difficulty doing is enforce existing laws.
Congressman Paul Brown, you have 90 seconds in which to solve the immigration problem.
I do that very quickly. Let's secure the borders and nothing else matters until we do. We've got to secure the borders. In fact, we've got a terrible legal immigration problem. We have all these illegals here in this country. We've had 4 presidents now who've totally refused to do what was put in the 1986 amnesty bill that President Reagan signed into law. And that's to secure our borders. Until we secure our borders, nothing else will matter. That's absolutely the only thing that we must do, and then solve all the problems. We should be a nation ruled under the rule of law instead of the rule of man. And we've had 4 presidents now who just totally refused to uphold that 1986 law. The only new law I'd like to see passed is one that makes English the official language of America.
Art Gardner, immigration.
Well, let's get real. We have somewhere between 10 and 15 million illegal aliens here. All the loud shouting about no amnesty and enforcing the law hasn't changed that. The deportation process is only about 50% successful, even when the law is followed. So as a practical matter, we have millions and millions of people that we just do not have a way to get them out of the country. So we should take a practical approach. Secure the borders, yes. But after you do that, register the illegals who are here and convert them into taxpayers. They're here, they're not paying tax, they're taking up jobs, they're working for cash, and they're greatly hurting our economy. Lots of Americans can't compete at the bottom of the labor market because illegals are here working without having taxes withheld. So if we would register them, let them stay as long as they're not criminals, register them, convert them into taxpayers, that's a big part of the solution. The other thing is, we would not allow any of them to be citizens unless they join the military, serve 5 years, and earn an honorable discharge. If they've done that, okay, they've earned citizenship. Beyond that, no. And let's stop the practice of allowing folks to cross the border or overstay their visas and have children here, and then the children become citizens, and then that's the anchor, and they get welfare from that. Thank you.
Congressman Phil Ingram, immigration.
Kyle, it's a great question. What we do not need in this country is another omnibus bill like Obamacare. We do not need an omnibus immigration bill. I don't care what Republican point you may have heard of. We have got sufficient laws. We're just simply not enforcing those laws. Look, we allow in this country every year 1 million green cards. 1 million people come into this country legally, permanent legal residents. They may or may not become citizens. We want them to become citizens. That's more than every other country combined that has any limits whatsoever on immigration into their country. Now, think about this for a minute. I've got a number of suggestions that we can enact to improve the situation. Yes, enforce current law. We have a 7%, greater than 7% unemployment rate in this country. In Georgia, in the state of Georgia today, we have 435,000 illegal immigrants in the state of Georgia today. So look, let's say as I conclude, let's enforce current law first and foremost. Let's absolutely, I agree with my colleague, end birthright citizenship, total misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment, end this chain migration that Teddy Kennedy started in 1965, and pass my Nuclear Family Priority Act, only mom, dad, dependent children. Make English our official language, and hey, a last thought, why not base our immigration numbers on our employment rate?
Congressman Joe Gabriel, we'll leave it there. You can circle back to it if you like. Tom Green, the next question to you, and then goes to David Perdue.
The United States Constitution gives the Senate a role in foreign affairs by requiring a two-thirds vote on ratification of treaties. What do you think the role of the United States should be in foreign affairs?
Thank you. Right now, the greatest threat to our national security is our own federal debt. I've said that before. If you want to have a strong foreign policy, you have to have a strong military. To have a strong military, you better bloody well have a strong economy. We bankrupted the Soviet Union in the 1980s because we had a stronger economy and had better ideals. Today, we're bankrupting ourselves with our own foolishness. Do you realize we have a peace treaty with Taiwan right now? This is part of our foreign policy. We have a peace treaty with Taiwan that says we have to go to their defense if China comes across the Straits of Formosa. Well, guess what? We have to go to China to borrow the money to go to Taiwan and to defend them against China. I can't think of a more illogical result from not facing up to the reality that you and I have to face up with every day, and that is that we can't spend more than we take in. This government's spending for the last 5 years 35% more than it's taking in. It can't go on forever. If you want a strong foreign policy, in all seriousness, we have to get serious about not going straight across the board with cuts, but determined priorities. Go to zero-based budgeting and make sure you fund the things that are of a priority to defend our country and to make sure we have a strong foreign policy. Thank you.
The question is about foreign policy. What is the Senate's role in shaping foreign policy?
What the Senate's role should be in shaping foreign policy is to obey the Constitution. Some things are not that difficult. Our Constitution clearly states our militaries are for the defense of our borders. And we have treaties to help us in dealing with our allies. Our problem is, and I'm just going to give you some things that you can see, we like to meddle in other people's business. We've been doing it since Reagan. None of that has changed. Mr. Kingston talks about he wants a strong military. But I can't take that serious when we have soldiers that commit suicide at a higher rate than civilians. I can't take that serious when I see troops that are suffering in Walter Reed Hospital. You can't have a strong military if you don't have troops that you take care of. And it all comes back to the same thing. Our foreign policy is also starting to affect us. The things that we do overseas, we do to us. You can ask those that are already in the room about FISA, the Patriot Act, indefinite detention. Ask them. See what they have to say about it. Those are violations of our Fourth Amendment protections. Just like Obama said, I'm going to go and bomb Libya. I am going to go and bomb Syria. It wasn't until the people rose up and said, no, Mr. Obama, you're not. And we have to do that in every aspect of our government. We have to stop them because they will not stop themselves.
Congressman Jack Kingston, the issue of foreign policy.
There should be 3 legs to the foreign policy stool. Number 1, military. Number 2, economic engagement. And number 3, humanitarian engagement. We talk about this. Military, we need to have the strongest military in the world. I am a firm believer in peace through strength. I know that is offensive to our friends on the left, but peace through strength works. Number 2, we do have to be economically engaged. I think there's trade opportunities around the world, places for Americans to sell their goods and products. Right now, for example, you know what a great economic impact poultry is to Hall County? There are all kinds of new markets emerging for poultry, India being one of them that has over 1 billion people. We have some opportunities from the economic standpoint. And then 3rd, humanitarian. You know, we need to be engaged in the world health picture, and here's why. If you have a bird flu pandemic, it will come to America. We need to know what diseases are out there. We have all but eradicated polio. Now, if you talk to anybody who's 50, 60 years old, their parents, they grew up with the fear of polio. But today, there's 322 cases worldwide because of what we have been involved with. And that keeps you safe. No one here. You go over to a college campus and ask them about polio, they don't even know what it is. And that's because we took a lot of this and put it offshore. We did our work, we engaged, and so military, economic, humanitarian engagement.
Congressman Kingston, thank you very much. Congressman Paul Brown, again, the foreign policy discussion.
The principle that ought to drive our foreign policy decisions is this, and that's what benefits America the most. We cannot continue to try to be the world's policeman. I'm in the military. In fact, I'm the only combat veteran up here. I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2012. I'm a Navy reservist today. We have to, I agree with my friend Jack Kingston, we have to make sure that we have the strongest, best military in the world. I also believe very firmly that the United States should never, ever go to war unless Congress declares war. It's absolutely imperative that we support Israel, our brothers and sisters in the Middle East, not only because of the geopolitical reasons there, which are strong enough in themselves, but because of a promise that God gave. He said, I'll bless those that bless you, I'll curse those that curse you. America must support Israel to continue to be blessed. And the last thing, a bill that I introduced, and I believe very firmly, we've got to get the U.S. out of the UN and the UN out of the U.S.
Mark Gardner, the question deals with the Senate's role in shaping foreign policy.
Well, the U.S. Senate is supposed to be the adult in the room. The U.S. Senate has a special place in our government. Senators are elected to a 6-year term, and we expect senators to exhibit wisdom and judgment and guide our country accordingly. So the Senate should, in its role, be very slow to anger. The Senate should recognize that we need a strong defense, absolutely. But we are not the world's policemen. We do not need to go to war every time there's a suggestion of going to war. They have a saying in baseball that the best trades are the ones that you don't make. And the same is true when it comes to war. We don't need every war. And in fact, sometimes we can go to war we shouldn't have. So the Senate should be the deliberative body that's tempering the debate, that is counseling caution and wisdom. That's the role of the Senate.
Congressman Bill Gingrich.
Todd, thank you very much. Great question. The Senate's role, of course, is advise and consent. And all these cabinet-level positions, even combatant commanders, have to be approved by the United States Senate. And to hear United States senators in anticipation of approval saying, well, this is the worst choice the President could possibly make for Secretary of Defense, or this is the worst choice the President possibly could make for Secretary of State, or we really question the character, the moral character and integrity of this individual who's going to be combatant commander of Central Command, or whatever command across these United States. I think we ought to have the guts in the United States Senate to stand strong and turn down these presidential nominees that we know in our heart of hearts are not the right person from the position, instead of just saying, oh, well, he or she used to be one of our buddies in the Senate, and we're going to scratch their back, and they'll scratch our back, and you go ahead and approve them. Now, I'm all in favor of staying out of foreign entanglements unless absolutely necessary. But it is occasionally absolutely necessary. Do you think Israel, do you think Ukraine, the breadbasket of Russia, and how important it is that they go west and not east? You think about Turkey and them wanting to be in the European Union to strengthen our alliances. You think about Iran, if we let them, stood back as the United States Senate and let them go ahead, relieve those sanctions, and let them go ahead with a nuclear weapon, God help the Middle East. We have to be strong, we have to be courageous, we have to protect our friends, and yes, occasionally that does include foreign help financially, like the $3 billion that we give to Israel each and every year.
Congressman, thank you. Karen Handel.
Of course, we need to have a strong military, and that's to ensure the safety of our people and to protect our freedoms. But the financial crisis that this country is facing is jeopardizing our ability to even adequately fund our military, to put them in a position to be able to act whenever and wherever they're needed around the world. We have an obligation in the United States Senate to actually get this budget and this deficit under control, and that is one of the main reasons I am running for United States Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, if we are bankrupt, we won't be in a position to protect our people or protect our freedoms. And we have individuals up here talking about how they've cut spending, this or that. The truth is that over the past 20 years, our debt has gone from $4 trillion to $17 trillion. That is a massive increase, and it is going to cripple us financially. We need to get the debt and the spending under control so that we can put this nation on solid financial footing, and that will let us ensure that our military is adequately funded and we can protect our people and our freedoms.
I got one job up here. Did everybody answer that question? I believe we did. So we're next to Kyle. That's my other job, is to keep up with these two guys. Kyle Wingfield, the next question is for you, and then we'll go to Derek Grayson.
Great, thank you. We have two physicians on the stage tonight, but unfortunately we have a growing shortage of doctors in this country. While Obamacare is accelerating that trend, it's a problem that was already becoming apparent before that law was passed. So, because I'm pretty sure all the candidates are for repealing Obamacare, I want each of them to tell us what, if anything, they think the Congress should be doing to address this doctor shortage besides Obamacare.
Besides Obamacare?
Besides repealing Obamacare.
I'm not aware of how many doctors we are short of. I am aware of this. We have massive fraud taking place that creates massive liabilities for doctors, making it almost to the point to where they say, it's not worth being a doctor because I don't want to go broke because I'm being sued by somebody. We also have that same situation with lawyers, but for whatever reason, they continue to become lawyers because they know they can go and work in Congress. Everybody is on the bandwagon of repealing Obamacare and all of the problems that it will create. I am too. But I was saying, why aren't we doing something about the health care issues before we got Obamacare? We had 12 years to do something. We had 12 years to do something about tax reform. In 1996, Neil White, along with 4 other individuals, put together a consumption tax bill. People said they supported it, but they did absolutely nothing. So we can talk about these things, doctor shortages, et cetera, but one thing is for certain. If you keep sending them back, none of that is going to change. None of it.
Thank you, Derek Grayson. By the way, I should have asked, because Kyle Wingfield posed the question in such a way, if there's anybody on this panel who is opposed to repealing Obamacare, we'll give you the rest of the night. Congressman Gainsville.
And that might be their last night. You cannot talk about addressing the doctor shortage unless you talk about repealing Obamacare. It's 1/6 of the economy. It is government command control and interference between the doctor-patient relationship. You've got to get rid of Obamacare if you want to address the doctor shortage. And don't take my word for it. Talk to your physician. That's what they'll tell you. I talked to a physician the other day, and he said every year I'm invited to go to a college and talk to the students. And for the first time in my career history, I told the students the other day, don't go into medicine. Now, this is some of the best and the brightest talent in America. We can't let that happen. We have got to repeal and replace Obamacare with a patient-centered, market-driven healthcare system that makes healthcare more affordable and more accessible for everyone.
Jack, I've got the bill. It's the Patient Option Act that will do just that. In fact, my bill, the Patient Option Act, is a 77-page market-based, patient-centered healthcare reform plan. Obamacare must go. We must rip it out by the roots. That's what the bill does. But it can be described in 3 terms. It's your doctor, your insurance, your choices. And the doctor shortage, Kyle, is because of government intrusion in the healthcare system. I'm a family doctor. I know how government has, for years, through Medicaid and Medicare, affected the whole cost as well as delivery of medical services. Now, what my Patient Option Act does, it'll give a mom who's trying to balance her budget the ability to buy what insurance fits her family the best at a price that she can afford. It'll also give her the ability to take her child to the doctor of her choice, so that she and the doctor can decide what kind of medicine that child needs, whether the child needs to go in the hospital or not. It'll also give her a tremendous peace of mind as she takes care of her elderly mom and dad. That her mom and dad will get good quality health care and won't have some federal bureaucrat telling her mom and dad what kind of medicine they can get, whether they go in the hospital or not. The Patient Option Act is the only bill been introduced in Congress that keeps a federal bureaucrat out between you and your doctor. It's been endorsed by the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, as well as Freedom Workers. They say it's the best health care plan out there. So I've got the plan.
Congressman Brown, thank you very much.
This question is very interesting. If you think back to the way things were 30 or 40 years ago, the smartest people in school became doctors. And I think that's what we would really like. I want a smart doctor. I don't necessarily need a smart guy on Wall Street or a smart insurance executive. I want a really sharp doctor. And unfortunately, the growth of the role of the insurance system in healthcare has made it much more attractive for that smart person coming out of school to become an insurance executive or to go into financial services rather than be a doctor. So the best thing that we could do to increase the numbers and the quality of the doctors that we have available to us would be over time to reduce the role of insurance, not to increase it. The insurance, think about what's going on today. You know, you don't buy car insurance that covers your gasoline and your oil changes and your tires. You buy car insurance that protects against the car being in an accident and totaled, and then you're having a big financial upset. That's the way healthcare should be. This healthcare that pays for everything is not really insurance, it's a prepaid plan. And the insurance companies are getting most of the money, not doctors. We need to return to doctors first, not insurance companies.
Congressman and Dr. Phil Gingrich.
Kyle, it's a great question. I don't think anything is threatening the doctor shortage than Obamacare, but there are a lot of other things that we can do. And I am the co-chair of the House GOP Doctors Caucus. And we have many bills, individual bills, omnibus bills to replace Obamacare. But we also are in the process this year to replace this flawed payment system that we give to our doctors under the Medicare system. It's called SGR, but it's much more complicated than that. And the doctors don't expect to make a profit, but they just expect to keep the lights on and to keep their small businesses going. And those 15 to 25 people that work for them continue to have a job. So that's what we're doing. Let me just say also, Kyle, that we need more emphasis on STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. Young people that really are fired up to study hard, to work hard, to do these things, because being a physician is really hard. Long hours, hard work, decent pay, but look, having someone like a mentor, like St. Luke, the patron saint of medicine. Our kids can no longer talk to St. Luke, but they can talk to a mentor that can tell them it's not about money, it's not about getting rich, you'll have a decent income, you're not going to be a Wall Street tycoon, you're not going to be the CEO of some Fortune 500 company and have a net worth of 25 to $50 million. No, but you're going to have a decent income, and when you look in the eyes of these people that can't pay you one dime, and they appreciate so much that you care, that's all you need. That's all the compassion that you need in life. It's a great profession.
Congressman Gabriel, thank you. Karen Hamel, healthcare, the top of the show.
This is just another example of the lack of leadership and the lack of results that we're seeing out of Washington and Congress. When so-called Hillary Care was derailed, what happened in dealing with healthcare issues, including this one? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We need to get serious about solving problems. One of the most important things that we can do to address the physician shortage, number one, yes, repeal Obamacare and replace it with H.R. 2300, Congressman Tom Price's bill. That includes tort reform. We know that many doctors, absolutely, we need to have tort reform to protect our physicians from frivolous lawsuits, and driving up the cost of healthcare. Defensive medicine is a huge expense within the healthcare sector. Then the second piece for physicians, many physicians want to be involved in research, and Obamacare specifically is really going to stifle the kind of technology and research that has made the United States of America one of the most robust places for disease discoveries. So we need to, for those two reasons, look at Congressman Tom Price's bill, H.R. 2300, get serious about solving problems, stop kicking the can down the road just so that they can get reelected.
Thank you. You know, when you talk about Obamacare, I hear these doctors talk about how much they care. Where have they been the last 3.5 years? Seriously. We knew this bill was flawed 3.5 years ago. We couldn't read it before they voted on it, but they had plenty of time in 3.5 years to read every page of that bill and tell us how bad this was going to be. Why did we wait till 2 weeks before the last debt ceiling fight to bring it up? We need people up there who are willing to fight for it every day, 24/7, 365. Oh, I'm sorry, they don't do that. I think they worked maybe 113 days this year. Guys, I'm telling you, this is an insidious law. I'm a perfect example. I'm one of 5 million people. My wife Bonnie is here. We've been married 42 years, and I'm telling you, our insurance was just canceled. 5 million Americans have been canceled. Only 2 million have signed up, and they're the high-risk people who need the services. It's not accomplishing anything it was intended to do. It's hurting job growth right now. 70% of small business has either stopped hiring or has cut back hiring, cut back employment because of Obamacare. This is killing job growth. The doctors is only one problem. You've got nurses, you've got technicians, all of this. What have they done? The Obamacare law has taken over 17% of our economy and created dramatic uncertainty. Or would you invest in a healthcare company right now? Or service your kid in college for 8 years or 12 years? No, you would not do that. The last thing, the next United States Senator had better go up there and be more concerned about solving this problem long term than getting reelected. Thank you.
Here's where we are in the proceedings now. We're going to ramp up the questioning so that we can get to your closing statements. But I want to do this because there's a couple of things that didn't come up over the course of the evening that I know are issues that are of concern to some of these folks here, and are national issues that you folks in Congress and outside of Congress have been looking at over the past few days. So here's what we're going to do. All right? We're going to go straight down the line, starting with Art Gardner. You're going to answer yes or no. Anything other than yes or no, and you will find yourself having dinner with Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. Yes or no only? All right.
I'm a lawyer, remember.
I understand. Yes or no? Congress is being asked to consider, President Obama asked again today, an increase in the minimum wage. Art Gardner, yes or no?
No.
Phil Gingrich?
No.
Karen Handel?
No.
David Perdue?
No.
Derek Grayson?
No.
No.
Congressman Jack Kingston?
No.
Congressman Paul Brown?
Absolutely no.
All right. Final question, we'll get to our closing statements. Then we'll work our way back. Congressman Paul Brown, we'll start with you and then work our way back up. Big debate in Georgia right now as it relates to national education standards. Common Core. Should Congress, yes or no, and listen to the question, should Congress take action to repeal at a national level any component of Common Core? Congressman Paul Brown.
I want to repeal the Department of Education. That's what
Jack Kingston, Congressman Jack Kingston.
Anything that's an overreach to local education should be curtailed.
All right, who are we next? Derek Grayson.
Common Core.
Should Congress repeal Common Core?
By any means necessary.
Karen Handel. I'm sorry, David Perdue.
My mom and dad were teachers. If my dad were alive tonight, he'd say, kill it tonight.
And now Karen Handel.
Absolutely. Let's do everything that we can to stop Common Core and the intrusiveness of the federal government into our local education.
Congressman Gingrich.
Yes.
Yes, Congress should kill Common Core. Art Gardner.
Yes.
Yes, Congress should kill Common Core. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Kyle Wingfield and Todd Rainey. Let us get now to our closing statements, and we will begin again on my far left with Congressman Paul Brown. Congressman Brown, 2 minutes by way of closing statement.
Candidates in this race can be categorized in 3 groups. There's the first that claim to be conservative, but they have absolutely no record to back that up. There's a second group that claim to be conservative, but their record does not back up a constant and a continual position of being conservative. And then one candidate stands alone, and that's me. I am a proven, conservative, consistent constitutionalist. There are 4 C's that describe who I am and what drives me. Consistent, conservative, constitutionalist, Christian. There are 4 questions I ask about all legislation. All 4 have to be yes for me to vote yes. The first, is it constitutional according to the original intent? The second, does it fit the Judeo-Christian biblical principles our nation was founded by? 3, do we need it? 4, can we afford it? If all 4 yes, I vote yes, otherwise I vote no, and I'll pledge to you I'll do that as your U.S. Senator. I'm the father of 3, the grandfather of 2, the husband of my wife for the last 28 years, Nikki Brown. I'm fighting for their future, for their freedom, and for their liberty. I'm fighting for the future of you, your children, and your grandchildren. And the only way that we'll have that freedom and liberty is if we put the dragon that is the big government in its cell. The cell bars are the enumerated powers of the U.S. Constitution. I've been working to take the power and the money out of the hands of the politicians in Washington and leave it in your hands and in your pockets. And I stand alone among all these candidates. I would appreciate your vote. I would like your help and your support. And I would need your prayers. Together, we can put America back on the right track. We can put this country back on the limited government that our founding fathers meant. In this document, the Constitution of the United States, is how I believe, and we've got to return to this document as the governing force of America.
Congressman
Vote for Paul Brown. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Congressman Jack Kingston, 2 minutes for a closing statement.
We need leaders who will take Georgia values to Washington and not the other way around. I am running because the American dream is in peril, and I believe the U.S. Senate is the battleground to turn America around and get it back on the right track. I've never forgotten our Georgia values, the values you and I grew up on, the values of hard work, the values of frugality, the values of idealism. These are the values upon which Libby and I have built our home and reared our children. These are the values that I took to the business world when I helped grow an insurance brokerage firm to become the 17th largest insurance firm in the United States of America. These are the values that I based my 6-point plan on to turn America around. I'm tested and I am consistent. Last week, the National Journal rated Doug Collins and Jack Kingston as the most conservative congressman from Georgia. I have an A+. I have an A+ rating with the NRA. I have a 100% rating with National Right to Life. I have a 92% rating with the United States Chamber of Commerce and a 100% rating with the National Federation of Independent Businesses and a 96% rating with the American Conservative Union. I not only voted against Obamacare and have fought consistently about Obamacare, but I also voted against the George Bush stimulus plan and the George Bush bailout of Wall Street because my idealism goes beyond party loyalty. You have to be consistent. I'm a lifelong Georgian. I've spent many wonderful hours in Hall County. I almost grew up here in some respects. Water skiing with John Vardaman, deer hunting with Jeff Reedy and David Latham, Lambert Kai meetings with Joe Wood and Dick Valentine. In my business career, I had clients in Hall County, and my campaign is practically being run by Hall County leadership. J.D. Mueller, Brian Hollis, Astrid and John Brakefield. And every Monday, I am on the phone with Philip Wilhite getting instructions and planning for the next week. I will never forget who elected me, who sent me to Washington, and what I went there to do. Thank you.
Philip Grayson, 2 minutes for a closing statement.
I ought to get an extra 30 seconds. Let me say a couple of things to you. If you listen to what was said when we talked about Obamacare, they wanted to repeal it and replace it with more government control. The government ain't got no business in health care. It belongs to the states. That's where it should remain. Not with the government. The only person worthy of your vote is one that will support the Constitution 100% of the time and 100% of the Constitution. Not the pieces that they like, not the pieces that are agreeable, not the pieces that rub somebody else's back. 3 men up here in this room have voted to allow the government to spy on you. Now you have an opportunity tonight. When you shake their hand, ask them, why did you allow the government to spy on me? Why did you vote for various forms of Patriot Act? Why did you vote for indefinite detention? You deserve to know because it was a violation of at least your Fourth Amendment rights. Now, if 60, 70, or 15% of the time in standing for the Constitution is okay for you, go ahead and vote for one of them. Because I ain't got nothing for you, because I'm a 100% guy. Another gentleman that I was sad to find doesn't believe in campus carry. Now for me, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. That's being 100% on the Constitution. You have a choice. You can get rid of your blind spots and you can send a message to DC. You can send me. And when you send me, I want you to tell them that I'm coming. And what I'm bringing with me is 100% of the Constitution, 100% of the time.
Mr. Perdue, ladies and gentlemen, what we've seen the last hour and a half is why I'm in this race. We're not talking about the crisis. If we had the Chinese at the Golden Gate Bridge what would we be doing tonight? Would we be talking about the Farm Bill and the guest worker program and immigration and foreign policy involvement? These are all critical issues. But if we don't solve the crisis that you and I know exists, we're going to lose the right to debate these. And you know what? Senate seat if we don't wake up. 60% of voters in Georgia believe the debt in the economy is the #1 crisis in this country right now. 15% of them think that education is. We got close to one of those topics tonight. We haven't gotten close to the big question in 3 debates. Real change sometimes takes an outside perspective, a fresh eye, a new point of view, and a little bit of common sense. That's what I'll bring to the U.S. Senate. When Harry Reid can exempt his own staff from Obamacare, don't we need an outsider to change that? When our own debt gets so big that it's the biggest threat to our national security, don't we need an outsider to change that? If we can put the world on my iPhone, why can't we balance our budget? If we can win the Cold War, why can't we get America working again? If we put a man on the moon in 10 years, surely we can eliminate our debt over time. Fixing big problems is what I've done all my career. Look, the decision in this race is very simple. We've got great people up here. You've got 4 professional politicians. Pick one. I don't think it'll make much difference. We know nothing will change. But if you're as outraged as I am by the size and scope of our government, by the trashing of our Constitution, and by the silly, immature behavior that we witness every week in Washington, I think you'll give this outside a try. If you want different results in Washington, we have to send a different type of person to Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to end where I began, and that's with this. That results matter and records count. We have spent the last hour and a half hearing about everything that my opponents say they want to do. Ladies and gentlemen, they've had a combined 42 years to do every single one of them, and they haven't. To be sure, consistency is a really important value, but so is being honest and straightforward about the record. And those up here want you to think that they're all about cutting spending, when the truth is, 2 of the 3 congressmen up here, they voted not once but multiple times to raise the debt ceiling by trillions of dollars. They were part of driving up this spending in this country to leave us with a $17 trillion debt, voting for things like the Bridge to Nowhere, voting for $20 million for a Ted Kennedy Center. Now, folks, it makes me wonder, what are the priorities? What are their priorities? And then I have to look at television commercials or television news stories about fancy trips all around the world, to 14-day safaris to South Africa, Las Vegas. Ladies and gentlemen, we need a United States Senator who is going to be focused on you, who is going to go to Washington with the guts and the resolve to make the hard decisions that we need to make today. Now, I never could have imagined that I would be standing before you tonight to ask for your vote to be your next United States Senator. When I left home at 17 to move away from a troubled home environment, I worked hard. I worked really hard. And the first president that I was able to vote for was Ronald Reagan. And he told a country shortly after being elected that, much like today, was uncertain and frightened about the future. He told us that this country's best days were ahead. Well, I'm running for United States Senator so that our best days are still ahead. I ask for your vote. But know this, I'm going to work very hard to earn it. And then together, we will have the guts and the resolve to make the hard decisions today to ensure that that next 17-year-old boy or girl who needs to leave home, that everyone has the same kinds of opportunities for freedom and prosperity that we have had. Thank you, and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hear a lot of people running for elective office talking about, I'm doing it for my children, or I'm doing it for the next generation. I'm doing it for them, certainly. And I've got 13 grandchildren. But I'm doing it for you, some of you who are part of the greatest generation. I don't want you to outlive your money. And that's why it's so important for me to focus on you as well as the younger generation. And I'm talking about the $75 trillion worth of unfunded liability in Social Security and Medicare. You want and deserve every claim to be honored, and you don't want health care to be rationed. You want your Social Security to be strengthened, protected. You want it to be there for you. and your children and your grandchildren. And speaking of pledges, I am probably the only person up here that has made an accountability pledge in regard to Obamacare. That pledge says repeal or go home in my first term. Now, I don't want to go home in my first term, and I don't intend to, but I want to put some skin in the game. I want to have real accountability. And when we take over that Senate in 2014, and we need +6, you know that, and we get the presidency back in 2016, I'll have 4 more years to work with my colleagues in the Senate and work with a Republican president to repeal Obamacare. I should do that, and that is my pledge to you. Let me just conclude in these few seconds remaining. Your values are my values, and I will fight for those values every day in the United States Senate. And as I explained to you in my opening comments, and hopefully you agree in my response to the questions, that I am uniquely qualified to do that. I've got that balance of being a physician, and still a physician, and being a small businessman, and having those 12 years of experience in the United States Congress. Together, if you give me the opportunity to be your voice, we can turn this country around. Phil Gingrich, God bless Georgia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman Gilliam. And the closing statement goes to Art Gardner. Art Gardner.
Well, thank you very much. I told you in the opening that I'm not a Me Too candidate, and I think I've demonstrated that. Everybody on this stage says that they want to fix the budget. That's certainly why I'm in the race. That's the thing that got me off the couch and working for the last 2 years. But there are 2 paths in front of us. One path, advocated by most of the people on this stage, would narrow our party by sending out a narrow message. The other path is a path of broadening our party. I'm asking that we move to a broader statement of what a conservative is. I'm the only candidate on this stage that has the courage to say we need a new direction. Now, when we talk about conservatives, most everybody in this room is a fiscal conservative and wants the government to balance its budget. And most everybody in this room is a defense conservative. Where we have differences in the conservative universe is on social issues. And the problem is that when we run out candidates who are only hard-right social conservatives, it tends to drive away lots of people in the middle. It tends to drive away minorities, women, and especially young people. And if we're going to be the opposition that stops the liberal agenda that's going to run this country into the ground, we've got to win elections. That's key. And to win elections, we need women. We need minorities. We need young people. So help me build a broad coalition within our own party. That's the winning formula. That's how we can win this race. That's how we can win the national races. That's the key to victory going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Art Gardner. One last question for me. I'm sorry. Yes?
Mr. Grayson made some serious charges against me and my 2 colleagues, and he's totally incorrect in one of those charges, so I think 30 seconds.
Well, what we're going to do, because we're really up against the constraints of time now due to our radio partners here this evening, going to let you 2 settle that in the back alley someplace. And I'm going to pose a final question. Anybody up here can answer it. Just sing out if you know it. How many days between now and the May 20th primary?
37. 37. You can absentee ballot vote.
Absentee balloting, but the answer that I was looking for was 87, because I looked it up. I know because I looked it up.
The answer is 87.
Yes, thank you. The early voting, and you are correct, the early voting will start much, much sooner than that. What John Padgett, the chair of the Georgia Republican Party, would ask of me to ask of you is to seriously consider the choice you're going to be asked to make in those 37 or 87 or in the intervening number of days between. Because you are in all likelihood, give Michelle Dunn and the Democrats their due, you are in all likelihood looking at the next United States Senator from Georgia on this stage this evening. Some awesome responsibility. Let's again thank our host this evening, Dr. Ed Schrader, and the good folks at Brunel University. And let me conclude by inviting you. You heard John Paget in his remarks reference something called 301 Main Street in Gainesville. The locals here know that as the Georgia Mountain Center. And that is where the after party will take place. Not only a little reception and after party, but it says here the Humboldt County GOP is conducting a stronghold. They're going to want to know what you think about the debate and about the race moving forward. So meet us now. We will reconvene at the Georgia Mountain Center. Thanks for coming. Thanks for participating again. Thank these candidates.
Remember, my name's Mr. Other.
And have a great evening. Thank you.